The first time I heard my own voice coming from another part of the apartment, I still believed it had ended in the chapel. It was almost 3 in the morning when I woke up to someone whispering my name in the hallway outside my apartment. It wasn't a dream. I remember because the refrigerator was humming, car headlights were sweeping across the bedroom window, and I smelled that strange scent again. The same smell of wet wood and melted candles that soaked the exorcism room. Raphael. My voice. Exactly mine. I got out of bed thinking the television had turned on by itself. But the apartment was dark, silent, empty. Then I heard the camera, its electronic beep turning on by itself in the living room. To this day, I regret going to look. Before that night, I was just a freelance cameraman trying to survive by filming anything that paid well. Weddings, cheap documentaries, political interviews. Until I started working on religious videos for an independent production company called Lumina. Small churches hired the crew to record services, testimonies, and spiritual events. That's how everything began. Because after a while, stranger requests started appearing. Rituals, deliverance sessions, cases churches preferred not to acknowledge publicly. The money was absurd, always paid in cash. And always with the same condition: nothing can leak. At first, I thought it was ridiculous. Most of those possessed people were just unstable, desperate, or manipulated. I filmed everything with a technical, cold, almost automatic perspective. People screaming, pastors laying hands on them, crying, convulsions. Nothing more than that, until the case of Clara Villela. Her name came through Father Estevano, a man known among the more secretive religious groups in the fictional city of Santa Veronica. When he called me, the first thing he said was, "If you accept this job, come alone." That already unsettled me. The recording would take place in an old chapel far outside the city near Serra do Cervo. The place didn't appear on recent maps. According to him, the girl's family had been hiding the case for weeks. I asked what Clara had. The priest stayed silent for a few seconds, then he answered, "She knows things she shouldn't know." I almost refused, but I needed the money. My rent was 2 months overdue, and I owed equipment fees to the production company, so I accepted. It was raining when I arrived at the chapel. Not heavy rain, worse. That thin, constant drizzle that makes everything feel rotten. Mud clung to the van tires, and the trees around the place nearly hid it completely. The chapel looked abandoned. Small, old, walls stained with dampness, a crooked cross on the roof. And the silence there was strange. There were no insects, no wind, only rain. When I entered, I found 4 people besides the priest. A thin woman sitting on a pew praying nonstop. 2 enormous men standing near the altar. And Clara. She was tied to a wooden chair in the center of the chapel. She looked to be in her 20s, but seemed older. Exhausted face. Hollow eyes. Red marks around her wrists from the ropes. But that wasn't what frightened me. It was the way she looked at me. She slowly raised her head the moment she heard my footsteps, as if she already knew exactly who had walked in, and she smiled. It wasn't an aggressive smile. It was pity. "You shouldn't have come," she said. Her voice sounded normal, just tired. One of the men immediately grabbed her face. "Don't answer," he growled. The priest pulled me aside before I could ask anything. He told me to set up the camera quickly because her condition worsened after midnight. While preparing the equipment, I started noticing small things that felt wrong. Candles went out by themselves. The camera radio crackled even without interference. And every time I pointed the lens at Clara, the image lost focus for a few seconds. I thought it was humidity. Until I reviewed the footage later. Before the ritual started, Clara's mother approached me trembling. She was gripping a rosary so tightly her fingers were red. If she asked for help, don't listen. I asked what that meant. The woman just started crying. That was when I truly felt like leaving. But the priest began the prayer, and everything changed very quickly. At first, it looked like every other case. Clara trembled, breathed heavily, laughed at strange moments. The men held the chair while the priest recited words in Latin. Then she started staring directly at the camera, not at me, at the lens, as if someone were standing behind it. Her face slowly changed, not physically. It was her expression, her mannerisms, her presence. Her voice changed during the third prayer. Lower. You brought him here. The priest kept praying. Clara laughed. He doesn't even believe in any of this. I remember sweat running down the back of my neck at that exact moment, because nobody there knew that. I truly didn't believe. She turned her head toward me. But he will when I enter. The men tightened the ropes as she began thrashing violently. The chair scraped against the stone floor with a horrible sound. The camera failed. The screen filled with static, and then I heard it. Not from her mouth, behind me. A whisper so close to my ear I felt icy breath. Look at her. I turned without thinking. Nobody was there. When I looked back at Clara, she was still, completely motionless, eyes fixed on me, smiling again. The priest started speaking louder. The entire chapel seemed smaller now, the air heavy, hot. The smell of burning candles became overpowering, almost suffocating. Then Clara started vomiting. Not blood, a dark, thick substance like oil. Her mother screamed. The men nearly let go of the chair. And at that exact moment, the lights went out. Everything. The only illumination came from the candles near the altar. My camera kept recording. You could hear my own heartbeat in the audio. The priest ordered everyone to keep praying, but his voice no longer sounded steady. For the first time, I heard fear in him. Clara slowly lifted her head. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound she made. It sounded like someone speaking with their throat full of water. He is empty. The silence afterward was worse than the screaming, because everyone looked at me, even the priest. And in that second, I understood something horrible. They knew this could happen. The chair began shaking violently. The ropes snapped tight. The candles went out one by one. And Clara started laughing in the dark. The camera fell from my hand the moment something rushed from the altar straight toward me. I couldn't see it properly. I only felt it, like wind passing through my chest, like ice entering my lungs, like something forcing space inside me. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying across the chapel pews. The sound of rain had stopped. My head throbbed like I'd been drinking for days. My throat burned. The metallic taste in my mouth was so strong I had to spit onto the floor. Only one candle remained lit near the altar, and nobody was speaking. It took me a few seconds to realize they were all staring at me. Clara's mother cried silently in the corner. The two men looked exhausted. Father Esteban held a crucifix so tightly his fingers trembled. But Clara was calm. The rope still bound her arms, but her face looked different. Lighter, almost normal. She stared at me like someone who had just survived an accident. It left, she whispered. Nobody answered. I tried to stand, but my legs failed immediately. The priest rushed over and grabbed my arm. I'll never forget the question I asked him. Is it over? His eyes answered before his mouth did. No. He led me into a small room behind the chapel. It smelled of mold, old wood, and cold coffee. My camera sat on a table. Still on, the screen showed static interference. What happened to me? I asked. Father Esteban closed the door before answering. The ritual expelled the entity from the girl. So it's over. He kept staring at me in silence. It needed a new host, he finally said. I laughed nervously immediately. An automatic reaction. It sounded absurd even for that place. You're serious? The priest didn't answer right away. He simply turned the camera toward me and pressed play. The recording started normally. Clara tied to the chair. The prayers, the screaming. Then came the blackout. Even without light, the camera continued capturing something. A shadow. Not exactly a figure. More like liquid smoke crossing the altar. Fast. Violent. In the footage, you could clearly see that thing moving toward me and stopping directly in front of the lens. The image froze for 2 seconds. Then my face appeared, very close to the camera, except I had been unconscious on the floor at that moment. Even so, my face appeared staring directly into the lens, smiling. A chill ran up my entire spine. That's edited. But I already knew it wasn't, because the next thing I heard was my own voice from the video. Now he can hear. The audio distorted immediately afterward. Father Estevão turned off the camera. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then came the worst part. "You need to stay here." I looked at him in confusion. "What?" "We still don't know if it truly left you." That sentence hit me like a punch. I immediately felt anger. Irrational, hot, violent anger. "You knew this could happen." The priest looked away. That was confirmation enough. I shoved the chair aside and lunged at him without thinking. The 2 men rushed into the room and grabbed me before I could reach the altar. But the strange part wasn't my reaction. It was the strength. I practically dragged both men with me before they managed to restrain me. One of them slammed into the wall hard enough to knock down a painting, and I barely noticed. My entire body trembled. My vision pulsed. Then I heard another voice, inside my head. "Hurt him." I released the men immediately. The silence in the room became suffocating. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Nobody answered, but from their expressions, they all understood. I stayed in the chapel until dawn, not by choice. Father Estevão insisted I needed to be observed. Meanwhile, Clara remained strangely calm. She could speak normally now, eat, even smile. She just avoided looking at me for too long. At one point, she asked to speak with me alone. The priest refused. She insisted. "He needs to know." Eventually, they gave in. We went outside the chapel near the rain-soaked trees. The sky was still gray and the cold felt worse now. Clara kept her distance from me. "It's trying to understand you," she said. "Stop it." "I'm serious." She looked terrified, but not for herself. For me. I asked what exactly had happened to her. Clara took a long time to answer. "It started with dreams." The way she said that disturbed me immediately, because I had already started dreaming too, even while awake. Quick flashes, unknown faces, dark hallways, whispers. She noticed my expression. "It does that first." "What?" "It learns." The wind blew hard through the trees at that moment. Clara glanced quickly toward the woods behind me and stepped back. "You're going to start losing time." My stomach turned cold. "What kind of conversation is this?" She took a deep breath before continuing. "You'll black out for minutes, then hours. You'll wake up in places you don't remember going, and then it starts using your voice." Every word sounded absurd, but part of me already believed her, because I didn't remember waking up on the chapel pew. I didn't remember anything after the blackout. And there was something worse. A strange emptiness inside my head, as if my thoughts were echoing in a space too large. Clara stepped a little closer. "When it realizes you're resisting, it'll start showing you things." "What things?" She opened her mouth, but stopped. Her eyes locked onto something behind me. I turned around. Nobody there. When I looked back at her, Clara was crying. "It's here now." That night, I left the chapel. Father Estevão tried to stop me, but I threatened to call the police, the press, anyone. I just wanted to get away from there. Before I got into the van, he grabbed my arm and said something I never forgot. "If you start hearing someone call your name, don't answer." I drove for almost 2 hours before getting home. The problem was that something had already come back with me. I realized it in the shower. There were marks on my arms, not scratches, words, thin red phrases as if they had been pressed into my skin while I slept. I had to get very close to the mirror to read them. "Let me speak." My entire body froze. Because the writing didn't look handwritten, It looked made from inside the skin. That same night, I started hearing footsteps in the apartment. Slow, dragging, always stopping near the bedroom door, never entering, always waiting. I tried to ignore it, tried to sleep, until I heard my camera turning on by itself in the living room. The same electronic beep, the same sound from the chapel. When I walked in, the camera was already recording, pointed directly at me, and on the tiny screen, someone stood behind me. My blood froze instantly. I spun around so fast I nearly knocked over the bookshelf. Nobody was behind me, but the camera kept showing it. A dark silhouette standing near the kitchen. Tall, motionless, its face impossible to distinguish beneath the digital distortion covering the image. It only appeared on the screen, not in the apartment. I slowly backed away, unable to take my eyes off the display. The feeling was horrible because the figure seemed to follow me even while standing still. Then it raised an arm, pointed directly at me. The camera shut off by itself. The next morning I thought about destroying everything. The camera, the memory cards, the chapel recordings. I wanted to erase every connection to that place. But deep down I needed to understand what was happening to me. That's when I started watching the full footage. That was my greatest mistake. There were hours of raw material from the exorcism night. At first, nothing very different from what I remembered. Clara screaming, the priest praying, audio interference. But there were hidden details. Things I hadn't noticed during the ritual. Several times, Clara seemed to stare at specific points behind people, as if someone had been walking around the chapel the entire time, someone invisible. In one recording, one of the men holding the chair suddenly stops praying and stares into a dark corner near the altar. He starts crying, for no reason. 30 seconds later, he asks to leave the chapel. He never comes back. Then I found something worse. A voice. Very low, almost imperceptible beneath the prayers. I used headphones to amplify the audio. At first I thought it was Latin, then I realized it was my name repeated over and over, always closer. Raphael, Raphael, Raphael. I shut everything off immediately, but the voice continued, without the headphones, coming from the kitchen. I froze in the chair. The whole apartment felt muffled. Too hot. Even the air seemed heavy. The voice spoke again. Open. Low. Calm. Familiar. I slowly walked to the kitchen. The cabinets were closed, the lights off. But the window was open. I was absolutely certain I had closed it before sleeping. The curtain swayed in the street wind, and on the fogged glass, there was a symbol drawn from the inside. A spiral, made with fingers. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw quick flashes of places I had never known. Narrow corridors, underground stairways, people kneeling and staring at me. Not at Raphael, at something else. I woke up sitting on the bathroom floor at 4 in the morning, with dried blood on my nose, and no memory of how I got there. That was when I started writing down times. Because Clara had been right. I was losing time. Small blackouts started happening during the day. Sometimes seconds, sometimes entire minutes vanished from my memory. The worst happened 3 days later. I was editing a video on my computer when I heard knocking at the apartment door. 3 slow knocks. It felt strange because almost nobody knew where I lived. When I opened the door, nobody was in the hallway. Only an envelope on the floor. No name. No sender. Inside was a photograph of me, sleeping in my own bed. My stomach turned instantly. The photo had been taken from the corner of the bedroom. Someone had been there. Or worse, maybe they never needed to enter at all. On the back of the photograph, a sentence had been written by hand. It is learning you. I almost called the police. But what would I say? That a demon was stalking me? That it might be using my body? Instead, I called Father Estevano. He answered on the second ring as if he had been waiting. How long ago did the blackouts begin? That frightened me more than the question itself. How do you know? Because Clara had the same symptoms. I told him about the photo, the camera, the voice. His silence lasted too long. You need to come back. No. If you stay alone, it will go deeper. The way he said that made me feel cold instantly. Is there any way to remove this from me? More silence. Then I heard something strange on the other side of the call. People praying. A lot of people. And someone screaming in the background. Where's Clara? I asked. The priest took a deep breath. She disappeared last night. At that exact moment, I heard a noise behind me in the apartment, a chair scraping. I slowly turned around. The living room was empty, but the television had turned on by itself. Black screen, no signal. And in the reflection, someone sat on the couch, watching my back. I spun around again. Nothing. When I looked back at the television, the figure was closer, standing now. The call started breaking up. The priest's voice became metallic. Raphael, it can use reflections. The figure took another step on the television screen. My heart pounded so hard I started losing my breath. Then the image changed. For 1 second, my own face appeared on the screen. But it wasn't me. Eyes completely black, smiling the same way it had in the chapel camera footage. The television shut off, and the call disconnected. That night, I started locking every door in the apartment. Not because I believed someone would come in, but because I was starting to fear myself. The blackouts were getting worse. Sometimes I woke up in different rooms holding objects I didn't remember picking up. Once I woke up in the kitchen with a knife in my hand. Another time, I found wet dirt on my feet, as if I had walked barefoot through the streets during the night. I was falling apart fast, and then came the recording. The worst one of all. My camera had started turning on by itself several times during the night, so I decided to leave it pointed at my bed while I slept. I wanted proof I was going insane. At 2:13 a.m., I appeared asleep normally. At 2:47, I sat up abruptly in bed. The movements were wrong, rigid, mechanical. I stared at the footage without breathing. In the recording, I looked directly into the camera for nearly 2 full minutes, without blinking. Then I started smiling, slowly. Then I spoke, but not with my voice. He still thinks he can leave? My hands turned ice cold. The video continued. My body got out of bed and left the room. The camera kept recording the empty hallway for almost 20 minutes, until I came back. Except I wasn't alone, because behind me came a shadow, tall, distorted, moving slightly out of sync with my body, as if it were learning how to imitate a human being. And before the recording ended, I stopped in front of the camera again. My face filled the screen, and that voice whispered, "Now." He opened the door. The next morning, I found muddy footprints spread throughout the apartment. Mine. They led from the front door to the bedroom, then disappeared beside the bed, as if I had returned during the night, accompanied. I stood there staring at them for nearly an hour, unable to think clearly. My body was getting weaker. I barely slept. My eyes burned, and something else was worsening quickly. My thoughts. Sometimes violent impulses appeared out of nowhere. Quick images of strangled people, accidents, blood. They weren't exactly desires. They felt more like suggestions placed into my mind by another consciousness, and it was getting comfortable there. I tried leaving the apartment that afternoon. I thought being around people might help. I grabbed the camera, stuffed everything into a backpack, and went to a crowded cafe downtown. Mistake. At first, everything seemed normal. Conversations, coffee machines, soft music. Until I noticed a woman sitting near the window staring at me. She looked around 60. Gray hair tied back. Tired face. The moment our eyes met, she dropped her cup immediately, as if she'd been electrocuted. Then she stood up and walked toward me. "It's looking through your eyes." My throat tightened. "Excuse me?" The woman looked terrified. "You brought something with you." People around us started staring. I tried to act normal. "Ma'am, I think you're confusing." She grabbed my arm before I could finish, and at that instant, everything became strange. The entire cafe went silent. Not truly silent. Silent inside my head. All sound vanished. The woman's smile slowly disappeared as she stared directly into my eyes. Then she started crying. My God. I pulled my arm away immediately and left. People still watched me as I crossed the street almost running. My heart pounded wildly. My hands shook. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Fast. When I turned around, I saw the woman standing on the opposite sidewalk. But something was wrong. She was completely motionless. Even so, she seemed closer every time I blinked. I crossed the street without looking at the traffic light. I almost got hit. A car stopped inches from my body while the driver screamed something out the window, and in the reflection on the glass, I saw another face beside mine, both of us smiling at the same time. I ran back to the apartment and locked everything again. That's where I found Father Estevan waiting outside the door. He looked ruined, much worse than at the chapel. Hollow eyes, unshaven beard, deep dark circles beneath his eyes, and dried blood on his shirt sleeve. You stopped answering. How did you get in here? You left the door open. My stomach dropped. I was certain I had locked it. The priest entered without waiting for permission. He carried an old leather bag filled with books and religious objects. We don't have much time. The way he said it frightened me more than anything else. I told him everything. The blackouts, the recordings, the woman at the cafe. He listened in complete silence. Then he asked, "Have you started dreaming about doors?" I looked at him immediately. Because yes, every night now I saw the same door. Huge, black, old, with something breathing behind it. What does that mean? Father Estevan slowly sat down on the couch. It doesn't just want to stay. A chill pierced my chest. What do you mean? The ritual was interrupted before the closing. His hands trembled as he opened an ancient book full of marked pages. The entity wasn't trying to possess Clara. What? It was preparing a passage. I stared at the priest without understanding. Then he showed me a page from the book. An old drawing. A human figure kneeling before a dark door surrounded by shadows, and a sentence written below. The empty here first. My entire body shivered. What are the empty? The priest slowly raised his eyes. People who carry too much silence inside them. At that moment, I thought about my entire life. The years alone. The isolated jobs. The sleepless nights. The constant feeling of emptiness I hid even from myself. Father Estevan noticed. It chose you before that chapel. The room suddenly felt smaller. No. Clara only opened the way. I wanted to deny it, wanted to say this was insanity, but deep down some part of me knew it was true, because I had already been changing before the ritual, the dreams, the irritation, the feeling of being watched. Maybe it had been finding me for a very long time. Then I heard the sound coming from the apartment hallway. Footsteps, slow. The priest froze instantly. Both of us stared toward the bedroom door. Another step, wood creaking. There were only two of us in the apartment. Father Estevan pulled a crucifix from his pocket while whispering a prayer under his breath. The hallway grew dark, not because the lights went out, but because there seemed to be too much shadow there. Something stood near the bedroom door. I could feel it before I saw it. A heavy presence, ancient, almost suffocating. Then came the voice. My voice. He doesn't believe you. The priest gripped my arm tightly. Don't look directly at it. But I looked, and I saw it. Not completely, only pieces. A body too tall for the hallway, arms too long, a face hidden inside a darkness that seemed alive. But the eyes were mine. The creature began walking slowly toward us. Its movements were wrong, like in the recordings, like something learning how to use human legs. Father Estevan started praying louder. The thing stopped, then tilted its head and smiled with my mouth. The apartment lights began flickering violently. The television turned on by itself. The sound of the camera came again from the bedroom. Beep, recording. Beep, recording. The creature took another step. Then it said something that shattered what little control I had left. He already let me in. An unbearable pain exploded inside my head. I collapsed to my knees immediately. Images began flooding my mind too fast. Unknown people, dark rooms, deformed faces, and the door. Always the door, now slightly open, just enough for something to watch from the other side. I screamed, trying to block it out, but the images only intensified. Father Estevan held my face, trying to keep me conscious. Then I heard the creature whisper beside my ear, "Show him." And in that instant I saw the truth. There wasn't just one entity. There were many, waiting, on the other side of the door. And something inside me was beginning to open a passage for them. I woke up tied to the chapel floor. Again. It took me a few seconds to recognize the place because my vision felt strange. Everything looked too dark around the edges, as if the shadows had thickened. There were candles everywhere now. Hundreds. The heat was suffocating. Father Estevan knelt before the altar praying nonstop. Other men occupied the pews. None of them spoke to me. None of them even looked directly at me. And Clara sat near the wall, watching, free, but completely destroyed inside. Her eyes looked like someone who already knew how this would end. I tried to move. The ropes were tight around my arms and chest. "What did you do?" My voice came out hoarse. The priest didn't answer immediately. He kept praying. Clara was the one who spoke. "You blacked out for almost 2 days." My heart sank. "What?" She slowly nodded. It started coming out. Immediately, I felt something move inside my chest. Not physically, deeper, like a thought breathing. Father Estevan finally stood up. "You tried to kill a man." I stared at him in confusion. "The security guard from the cafe. You attacked him for no reason." The memories came in fragments, screaming, shattered glass, hands grabbing my arm, then emptiness. "I don't remember." That's exactly the problem. The priest slowly approached. "Now it can take over during your blackouts." My body started shaking. "Then get it out of me." Nobody answered. And that was when I realized their silence was worse than any answer. "You don't know how." Clara looked away. Father Estevan took a deep breath before speaking. "We know how to close the passage." The way he said it made me instantly nauseous. "And how?" Another pause. "By killing the host." The world seemed to stop. I could hear the candles burning, the rain returning outside, my own heart beating too fast. "No. If the door opens completely, it won't only be you." I started laughing nervously, an empty laugh. It all sounded impossible, absurd. Except I had already gone beyond doubt, because something inside me started laughing too. I felt it. A second reaction echoing in the back of my mind. Father Estevan noticed immediately. "It's waking up." The candles near the altar went out together. The air became heavy again. Then I heard voices, many voices, whispering simultaneously inside my head. I couldn't understand the words, but I could feel intention, hunger. The men in the chapel began praying louder. One of them held a crucifix pointed toward me with trembling hands. I tried to breathe, tried to think. But the images kept returning stronger and stronger. The door, always the door, now more open. Arms emerging from the darkness behind it. Hands too long. Deformed faces trying to peer through the crack. And then I realized something horrifying. They didn't want to come out. They wanted me to go in. My body arched violently against the ropes. An unbearable pain shot through my spine as that presence took more space inside my head. Father Estevan began the ritual. The prayers echoed through the entire chapel. Clara cried silently. The men held my arms while I fought against something trying to move my body before I could. Then I heard my own voice speaking without control. He opened because he wanted to. The priest kept praying. Liar. I tried to answer, but the other voice came out too, mixed with mine. You were empty. Tears rolled down my face before I even realized it, because that sentence struck something real inside me, maybe worse than fear. The entity wasn't entirely lying. It found me because there was space, loneliness, anger, silence, everything I had hidden for years. The ropes began snapping tight. The men almost lost control of my arms. Then the candles went out again, all of them. Darkness swallowed the entire chapel. I heard screams, running footsteps, something falling near the altar, and then silence. A silence too deep. When the first candle reignited, Father Estevan stood in the center of the chapel staring at me. But something was wrong. Very wrong. His eyes were completely black. Clara realized it before anyone else. She started screaming. The priest smiled slowly. It wasn't him anymore. The entity had moved again, and in that instant, I understood the true horror of it. It never wanted just one body. It wanted to spread. Use fear, use guilt, use broken people, one host after another, like a disease. The men tried to run, but Father Estevan slowly raised one hand, and all of them stopped, frozen, as if something had tightened the air around them. Clara ran toward me, desperately trying to untie the ropes. Quick, Raphael, quick. The priest walked toward us calmly. His movements were natural now, perfect, as if it had finally learned. Clara managed to free one of my hands. Then he spoke, calm, almost gentle. You still don't understand. The entire chapel seemed to breathe with him. Doors aren't only meant for leaving. The shadows behind the altar began moving, and for the first time, I saw complete shapes emerging from the darkness. Tall, thin, watching, waiting. Clara started praying through tears while trying to pull me away, but I couldn't move, because something inside me looked at those creatures and felt recognition, as if part of me belonged there. The priest stopped only a few feet away from us, smiled again, then blew out every candle in the chapel with a single breath. The last thing I heard before total darkness was Clara screaming my name. The second was my own voice answering from the dark. He isn't here anymore.